Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe. If you dare. I started seeing things out of the corner of my eyes, just kind of objects off in the distance on the side of the road. After a bit, I started seeing fantastic meteor/light showers in the sky. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. For those of you who have been sleep deprived enough to hallucinate, what was it like? Number 1. Commenter. In college, I tried to hold down a donut delivery job while taking a full credit load. I got up at 4:30 a.m. to deliver, and often was up until midnight or even later. After a particularly busy week with almost no sleep, I hallucinated a man crossing the street right in front of me while delivering, and I slammed on my brakes to avoid hitting him. When I realized that there was no one in the crosswalk, and no one anywhere in sight, I finished my deliveries and immediately quit my job. Person B. I had a very similar experience to this. I'm currently full-time in college, and working as a barista at a local coffee shop. I have to be awake at 4:30 a.m., at the latest, if I open at work. I'm often stuck doing homework until that late anyways, so I've gone days without sleeping on many occasions. Recently, I was driving into work for one of my opening shifts, and I thought I saw a construction worker walking out into the road full reflective vest and everything. I slammed on my brakes to avoid hitting him. Then I blinked, and there was no sign of any construction worker, and nobody else on the road around me. I didn't quit my job, but I definitely took a very long nap after I went home that day. Number 2. Commenter. Once on day 3 of about -1 hour of sleep a night, I was driving back from where I worked, about an hour and a half from home, and it was about 3 a.m. I thought I saw some dude with an unhinged jaw and black eyes running alongside my car at around 65 miles an hour. Needless to say, he wasn't real, but he kept looking at me, and when I drove by a church he disappeared. No idea why, I'm not religious. Person B. Creepy. I had something similar happen. I was going on 40 some hours of no sleep. I was driving back to my friend's house and thought I saw a shadow of a man run across the street. My friend couldn't figure out why I was slowing down until I explained about the man, and he told me no one is there. Number 3. Commenter. Like a radio or talk show playing faintly in the distance. I usually get this too. As a kid, I'd sometimes hear objects crashing, like if all the pots and pans had fallen to the ground. But some of these times my family heard them too, and there was nothing fallen when we went to check. Lol. I'd also get keyboards clacking, utensils ringing on plates, like people eating. Another post reminded me I am lately getting loud booms or pops, and I know they're not real because they sound next to my ears, but I've had noise cancelling headphones on, both times. Had me looking for open browser tabs. Lol. Person B. Often it's completely normal. Not everyone experiences it routinely, but audio hallucinations are fairly common when falling asleep/in a half-awake state. They've dropped off for me, but I used to hear things all the time as I was drifting off, including people saying my name in my ear or random noises, phone ringing, etc. Number 4. I once hallucinated my mother plotting my murder with a drug dealer right outside my bedroom window, after being awake for several days. Yes, there were drugs involved. No, she wasn't actually plotting my murder. Or outside my window. Number 5. Commenter. Back in high school when I would pull all-nighters, I had the same thing quite a few times. I'd be on my computer listening to music and doing homework at 4 a.m., and I swear I heard my mom call my name. Take off the headphones to listen, nothing. Weird stuff. Person B. I had stayed up for 33 hours gaming non-stop, and then I had started hearing my name being called by my dad and my brother and started talking to them as if they were there until I turned around to respond or say something and then realize and remember that they were still at work. It had been scaring me because it had kept happening for 10 hours out of the 33 hours. Number 6. Commenter. I had a meth problem several years ago. I think my longest stretch was 4 days. Past a certain point you just don't know which way is up. Sure, meth can make you weird, but in my experience I think the sleep deprivation is actually what makes you lose your marbles after long enough. When I made sure I slept and ate regularly, it was almost like an energy drink. But when I binged and had my junkie weeks, oof. Once I thought I was hearing music playing loudly somewhere outside. I was convinced it was a soundtrack to a big music festival I had attended a few weeks before that someone had also attended, and was now playing loudly in the middle of the night. The whole music festival. Multiple bands had a soundtrack? Bruh, I couldn't hear it when I listened for it, but while distracted I could plainly hear it. Dead of the night and no music was playing. Another time I was sketching in my room at like 3 a.m. I had a friend over who was just chilling with me, asking questions every so often that would lead to discussions. Slowly they responded less and less until I looked at them and they were just looking at me. Asked what was wrong, looked down, looked up waiting for the answer, and they were gone. Never there. They hadn't talked to me in months after they found out I was using them. So many shadow people. And those took a long time to go away after sobering up. Whispers, hearing someone talking to me, my name being called, hearing someone talking about me. Even though I was by myself, lol. Sometimes I'd be driving and cars would suddenly be coming straight at me, lights blinding and everything, only to sort of come to and realize I'm driving on a back road, I'm the only car for miles. By no means am I saying any weird mental shit had nothing to do with the meth. But in my experience, not sleeping for days had a much more horrifying effect. Person B. Many methamphetamine addicts report the appearance of shadow people after prolonged periods of sleep deprivation. Psychiatrist Jack Potts suggests that methamphetamine usage adds a conspiratorial component to the sleep deprivation hallucinations. One interviewed subject said that you don't see shadow dogs or shadow birds or shadow cars. You see shadow people. Standing in doorways, walking behind you, coming at you on the sidewalk. These hallucinations have been directly compared to the paranormal entities described in folklore. Well, at least you know you're not the only one. Number 7. Very calm as far as hallucinations go. I had driven for 20 plus hours and was in the Arizona/California desert. It was the middle of the night, it had been dark for hours and only other car lights and stars were visible. Started seeing things out of the corner of my eyes, just kind of objects off in the distance on the side of the road. Then there were things on the road ahead. That got my attention. After a bit I started seeing fantastic meteor/light showers in the sky. Wasn't scary or anything, didn't stop driving. To be young, numb, and invincible again. Number 8. Commenter. I stayed up with a friend working on a school report for greater than 40 hours and by the end of it we were both convinced that a cat had gotten into my house. Turned out we were just hallucinating the sound/weird movements in our peripheral vision and thought it must be a cat. Person B. I totally hallucinated a vivid cat once, after being awake for over 24 hours. My partner's old roommate had taken their cat finally to their new place, but I totally saw the cat laying in his usual spot looking up at me. It's like your brain is so tired that it inserts stuff that you're used to/ accustomed to seeing someplace. Number 9. Scary enough it always happens while driving. I wouldn't say I'm hallucinating so much as dreaming with my eyes open. The darkness begins to creep in from the side until you're somewhere else for what feels like you've always been there. Then you feel your eyes open and bam. Adrenaline. Only lasts for a moment until the same darkness begins creeping from the side again, and you're doing everything you can to keep your eyes open, but keeping them open doesn't help. Number 10. It's a common occurrence for me. Nothing too out there, though, usually just visual aberrations, like constantly seeing shadows moving in my peripheral vision, mistaking random objects for completely different objects, etc., plus occasional auditory disturbances along with the typical sense of displacement. Once or twice I had instances where familiar people were complete strangers, no recognition whatsoever. That was pretty trippy and more than a little terrifying. Number 11. It was the weirdest thing. I was taking notes on an extremely boring video in theology, but then words started appearing on their own without me writing anything. They were dancing around for a bit and I found it completely normal for a bit, but then I realized that words aren't supposed to dance. Then I snapped back to reality with nothing on my paper. Number 12. Commenter. For context, this happened during some military training. Laying down in the woods desperately trying to stay awake, usually the plants turn into people. Like you'll see a figure walking around out in front of you, and then come to and realize it was just a sapling or a bush or something. Happened surprisingly more during the day than the night. Person B. I had a similar experience during military training. It was really dark out, and I hadn't slept for at least 48 hours. I saw and heard several people crawling towards me in the bushes, and I thought it was part of the exercise, as we were on guard duty, just laying in the mud watching the woods. I called out to them several times, and my sergeant even had to go into the bushes to convince me there was no one there. Number 13. When Need for Speed Underground 2 came out on PS2 I stayed up for 3 days. Aside from being extremely tired and vision/hearing being very impaired, everything was mostly normal. Until I woke up standing inside Subway probably 10 miles away with no memory of how I got there. I guess I was hungry. Number 14. Used to overwork myself to the point of hallucinations fairly regularly. Most were auditory. I'd hear someone talking nearby, usually saying my name or just a couple of muffled syllables, bits of songs, like having an earworm except louder, lol. A distant ringing telephone was also common. Less commonly I'd hear something loudly falling somewhere. Visually, I'd mostly see flashes of color or blackness in the periphery of my vision. Like when someone walks by and you just barely see them out of the corner of your eye. Tall figures in the room, such as a coat on a rack, would also briefly appear to be a person standing there. Those were probably the most startling to me. Number 15. Commenter. It's honestly scary, like one time I was on the verge of falling asleep and I thought I felt somebody run their finger across my cheek. When I snapped upright into a sitting position, nobody was there. I live alone BTW. I'm sure I hallucinated it, but that shit is scary regardless. Person B. The same thing happened to me when I was a kid. I was just falling asleep and then I felt a hand on my head and I jerked up and searched my whole room. I didn't sleep that night. Person C. It is called a hypnic jerk. It typically is induced by stress and is more common in some people than others. Right when you are about to go into rest mode, your brain makes an error and contracts all of your muscles for a moment. It is mostly harmless, but if it happens frequently, a doctor's visit wouldn't be a bad idea. Number 16. Over one summer in high school, my friends and I stayed awake for a few days playing Dungeons and Dragons and other RPGs. We had tons of sugar and caffeine to help us play through the pain. I was laying on the couch staring at the ceiling and I saw a leprechaun, may have been a gnome, hard to tell from that distance, walk into view standing on the ceiling. He looked down at me, smiled and doffed his hat to me, and started to dance a jig. I said to myself, oh hell no, and buried my head in the pillow until I fell asleep. Number 17. I used to have episodes of insomnia as a teenager. Once, while walking home from school, I saw a car driving in my direction. It suddenly veered onto the sidewalk, continued toward me, and swerved back onto the road moments before hitting me. I thought it was real, but I was so out of it from exhaustion that I didn't even flinch. I realized a few days later that the curb of the sidewalk was too high for a car to have possibly driven over. Number 18. I was in Costa Rica patrolling the beaches every night to find sea turtles laying their eggs. It was an eco-vacation thing, so during the day we would be up and exploring the area. I don't know how they expected people to function on like 3 hours of sleep for a week. But we did it. I mostly remember super irrational thoughts. Thinking animal noises were people talking. Thinking monkeys were dogs up in the trees. But the hallucinations were crazy. I'm not sure if the beach really was glowing some, or if I was making all of it up. But my mind was making crazy glowing patterns in the sand. I thought the glowing stuff was also biting me. Really, it was sand fleas. We would stop and take a break mid-patrol. I'd lay down to rest and think I was still walking. Then wake up and keep walking. I got really confused as to when I was awake. Never saw a effing sea turtle. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time.